Welcome everybody to this brand new series. We'll just wait for a few more minutes for people to start joining in, and then we can begin the launch of the Literary Lounge. It'd be great to hear where people are, just to see if you can type on the chat interface below where you're streaming in from. That'll be lovely to see all the multiple places if you are. Nice. That's fine. Okay, so so we have got a very international audience here today for a very well-regarded and well-known international poet, that is Mr. Sudeep Sen, who I'm absolutely delighted to introduce as the inaugural speaker of this new series, the Literary Lounge. So Mr. Sudeep Sen needs no introduction. If you read the incredible bio that he has written, that we have received from him so far, he's been published everywhere. He knows practically everybody under the sun in the literary world. And it's such an absolute delight and privilege to welcome this literary titan of Indian poetry, as I like to call him. So maybe, the series, so let me give a small introduction to the series. The series is sponsored from the University of Glasgow, thanks to Dr. Colin Herd as the catalyst for it. And it's paired up with the Luxembourg Review, and coincidentally, I am in Luxembourg right now streaming this, so that's lovely. It's a lovely coincidence. And yes, so maybe we will start the show by, let's give a big, if you can see everybody, let's start by giving a big show of hands to Sudeep Sen.
Thank you very, very much. And it's lovely to be associated with Glasgow, because I remember the last time I was in Glasgow.
Because I'm muted, I don't hear.
Because it's.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Can you hear me?
Yes, please go ahead.
So I said it's lovely to be part of the Glasgow portal, because the last time I was in Glasgow I was part of the Edinburgh Lit Fest and Book Festival. And Glasgow University organized a reading in the beautiful Rennie Mackintosh building. And I just have such fond memories of this city. So it's lovely to be connected via all sorts of bits and bytes from across the world right now.
Yeah.
So thanks for joining in, and thanks for everything.
Thank you for joining. Thank you for being on the show. So I think we should begin with this show with this beautiful poem that you have, Prayer Flag. I think it'll be nice for everybody to see the video. So we're going to do a short video right now of Prayer Flag, which is this wonderful poem that Sudeep has written, and it's been made into a poetry video.
Om Tadam Shvam Shau Varaniyo Jyotish Kumbhasya Dhimahi Krutam Bhavyam Hi Bhavaya Om Gayatri Namaha.
padme hum. Oh, the jewel in the lotus. 1. Manas Sarovar, Mount Kailash. Frayed, flapping in the high winds, prayer flags gently unravel. Homage to the day's first light. But today the dawn is not as bright, though heavy, brooding, silver grey like the lake's shimmering glass top. No one is here except for a woman staring far away, wrapped in her sanctity of continuous linen, her own sari like a prayer flag, though devoid of any color. She isn't mourning or crying, just gazing fixedly into the water's changing glimmer as the sky's wet weight and the shore's rocky line meet, their edges meanderingly melting into the lake itself. I stood far behind her, behind everything she saw. She was only an accidental figure in the widescreen frame. Unlike her, I was looking skywards through the prayer flag's translucent cotton, counting each thread of each piece of cloth that wove private stories whispered only to me. Weather-worn, strung across canted multiple horizons, I tried to map their own geographies, each an island, each with its own terrain, texture, inscription, and scripture. Found on the highest points on land, as close to the sky as is possible, these magic carpets, shapes caught on an unintentional clothesline, were more meaningful to me than this vast monastic scenery. How each flag, each one must have preserved secrets that only their owners knew. How each a talisman exuded safety and calm, shrouding away grief for the briefest while when one forgets everything, real, imagined, and just dreams. My own piece of cloth that I once tied onto this line wasn't visible to me now. But that did not matter. I found strength in this procession of private passion, in these flags' lack of starch or hierarchy. Their stories passed down by one flag to another, toggled hand in hand through time and age, just like my pet yellow butterfly who infused each flower in my garden with the gift of life without any show or fair. I like the transparent quiet here. I also like the wind's occasional sound, its severe current tearing through the flag's heart, picking out the perfect pitch and melody. A memory now, a still, framed, not revealing to the world what I had once seen. The panorama's generosity, its wild, stark untouchability, how each story stitched and preserved like the jewel in the lotus, its crystal fine edges caressed by petal's soft skin, until everything folds inward like a fetus in a womb, a toppled, misplaced comma, my own implanted memory. And then they bloom, fanning outward, each flag, strand, story, each private grief and pleasure, chanting noiselessly in the mountain's silent winds.
Thank you so much for that. That was absolutely a mesmerizing video, and we'll come back to the topic of how you sort of move within different genres and within different media platforms soon enough. But perhaps we could have the reading of a few poems from you, please.
Sure. So let me start with a poem which is really an offering to all of you, all of us. It's an offering of friendship. And it's titled eponymously Offering. The kindness of libation, lyric, and blood. Her endless notes left for me little secrets, graces, trills recorded on blue and purple parchment to be lipped, tasted, devoured. Only the essence remains, its stickiness, its juice, its memory. Seamless juxtaposition, the brute and the passion, dry of the bone and wet of the sea, coarseness of the page and smooth of the lips iridium. I try and trace a line, a very long line. The ink blots as this line's linear edge dissolves and frays like capillary threads gone mad, purling in the deep heat of the tropics. Threads unraveling, each sinew tense with the want of moisture and the other's flesh. There are no endings here, only beginnings. Precious incipients, translucent drops of sweat perch precariously on a collarbone, waiting to slide, roll unannounced into the gullies that yearn to soak in the rain. Heartbeats shift the shape of globules as they alter their balance and color, changing their very point of gravity, constantly deceiving the other. I stand wanting more of the bone's dry edge, the infinite blur of desire, the dream, the wet, the salt, the ink, and the underside of her skin.
Beautiful.
Maybe I'll read another short poem called Banyan. And as we know, banyan, this is this beautiful tree in South Asia, which has all these tertiary roots. And so by the time the tree becomes very, very old, it's almost like this cave. And as youngsters, we used to play hide and seek under this tree and, through the network of all these tertiary branches. Banyan. As winter's secrets melt with the purple sun, what is revealed is electric. Notes tune unknown scales, syntax alters tongues, terracotta melts white, banyan ribbons into armatures as branch roots twist, meeting soil in a circle. Circuits glazed under cloth carry alphabets for a calligrapher's nib, italicized in invisible ink. Letters never posted, cartographers map uncharted. As phrases fold, so do veils.
Absolutely stunning. We just want to keep on listening to more poems.
Thank you. This is a poem called Winter. Delhi, of course, doesn't have too much of the winter season, but when it does have, it's extremely acute. 10 months of the year, it's very, 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 very steamingly hot. And then when the winter sets in, it can be sort of 1 degree, 2 degrees. And the houses here are not geared for winter. So this is a little poem which appears in Fractals. I'll be reading mostly from Fractals, which is book which is available in the UK through the London magazine editions.
Which is my favorite edition of the book.
Thank you. Yeah, they've done a beautiful job. Winter. Couch on crimson cushions.
You went to mute, I guess. Can you kindly unmute?
Uh, Sudeep,
You have gone to mute.
Mute.
Oh, sorry. Oh dear.
It happens. Yeah, it's poets and technical things sometimes don't always fuse together. So
I'll start again. Winter. Couched on crimson cushions, pink bleeds gold, and red spills into one's heart. Broad leather keeps time, calibrating different hours and different zones, unaware of the grammar that makes sense. Only random woofs and snores of two distant dogs on a very cold night clears fog that is unresolved. New plants wait for new heat to grow, to mature. An old cane recliner contains poetry for peace, woven text keeping comfort in place. But it is the impatience of want that keeps equations unsolved. Heavy, translucent, vaporous, split red by mother tongues. Winter's breath is pink.
absolutely beautiful. I remember, like, I've had very few winters like I've visited Delhi once in summer and once in winter, and I can tell you in winter I prefer it so much more. And I was wondering if, like you've been associated with the Luxembourg Review for a while now, since its inception. And I was wondering if one of the poems that we have in there, which I'm very fond of, is the poem Kinskuroi, which is, yes, I was wondering if you could read that.
Sure. Let me just find the page.
It's such a beautiful imagery. And
yeah, just the idea actually prompted me to write it. Kintsukuroi or kintsugi. I'll read the definition. It literally means to repair with gold. It's the art of repairing pottery with gold or silver lacquer and understanding that the piece is more beautiful for having been broken. Just this beautiful Zen idea of the fact that something that you can repair with precious metal, and then the object itself becomes even more beautiful after it's done. Part of it is also prompted by the fact that one of my potter friends, dear potter friend, she died, and the poem is partly based on her rooftop terrace in Delhi. Kintsukuroi or kintsugi. The cracked bowl that I mean to repair every day keeps getting neglected by my secret awe for bone china and its story of unbreaking. There were happier times when it stood perfect in its shape, its porcelain clay fluted nape elegant as a swan's neck. I found it in a heap of beautiful pottery, one among many that its maker carefully crafted in her tropical rooftop studio. To me, it was even new after it had accidentally slipped from my hands as I tried to wipe the Delhi dust that clung to us like camel brown film, like innocuous powder, transparent and deceptive like makeup. There are scenes I painted on its milk white skin, words I wrote, lines etched in, fragments of poems left unfinished. hieroglyphic encoded secrets that only I knew and understood, impervious to gossip's glare and jealous chatter. Today, I will bring out superglue and try to make repairs. Maybe I'll splurge on a rare metal, silver or even gold, to seal the cracks and fill them with molten healing. Anointing it with gold, memory, love, and desire is better than the perfection of its prior shape. Unbroken, poised as it was, unhurt love is not necessarily purer than love that is flawed. Insukuroi is a prayer that I have been granted. My bowl deserves the lacquer touch of a silver wish and the purest of rare gold.
That's a beautiful sort of imagery of weaving in and having, like repairing the, like the broken things, and in certain ways, as you said, the fractal things as well. So it's a lovely reading, and I was very lucky and very happy to have published that in the review.
My pleasure. You want more poems?
Sure. I mean, if I can request another, I feel like...
Yeah.
Another one from the Luxembourg review, because I feel this sort of connection with this thing. I think, which is one of my favorite poems from the entire collection, which was Cargill, which I'll ask some questions, which I have some questions about after the reading.
Okay. So Cargill, of course, now no longer the case, but when I wrote it, it was the last flashpoint between Pakistan and India. The war was fought in that place. Since then, there have been smaller wars that have been fought, and there's constant cross-border skirmishes in any case. But I visited Cargill 10 years after the war. I did this long trip from Delhi all the way to Srinagar, across from Leh to then down to Manali and back. This couple of months on the road in the high Himalayas, and rafting and camping and looking at the barren and beautiful landscape. And Cargill was not on my stop. And my young son at the time was at an age when he was playing with these plastic guns and bullets. And he said, Baba, let's go there. I'll find some shells and so on. And of course, you don't say no to your child. And we got there. And of course, it was a very, very, very ordinary outpost of a town, dusty and nothing to do. And he felt rather sheepish. But I'm really glad that he asked me to go, because this poem was born there. It's Cargill, and it opens with Derek Walcott's book-length poem, Chiapola's Hound. And I open with an epigraph from that particular poem book. And I quote, "A street of smoke and fences, gutters gorged with weed and reeking, scorching iron grooves of rusted galvanize, a dialect forged from burning asphalt, and a sky that moves with thunderhead cumuli, grumbling with rain." 10 years on, I came searching for war signs of the past, expecting remnants, magazine debris, unexploded shells, shrapnels that mark bomb wounds. I came looking for ghosts, people past, skeletons charred, abandoned brick, wood, cement that once housed them. I could only find whispers among the clamor of a small town outpost in full throttle, everyday chores sketching outward signs of normalcy and life. In that bustle, I spot war lines of a decade ago, though the storylines are kept buried, wrapped in old newsprint. There's order amid uneasiness, the musicians cry, the monks chant, baritones merging in their separateness. At the bus station, black coughs of exhaust, smoke screen everything. The roads meet, and after the crossroad ritual, diverge, skating along the undotted lines of control. A porous garland with cracked beads adorns Tiger Hill. Beyond the mountains are dark memories, and beyond them, no one knows. And beyond them, no one wants to know. Even the flight of birds that wing over their crests don't know which feathers to down. Chameleon-like they fly, tracing perfect parabolas. I look up and calculate their exact arc and find instead a flawed theorem.
It's such an amazing, searing poem. And I believe that this particular poem is part of the series Ladakh that you had written. And in an interview with, I think it was Ziaul Karim at the World Literature Today, you had said that you had sort of curated this entire sequence of poems as a symphony. I was wondering if you could get more into your, talk more about your delving into like cross-genre work and how that sort of manifests within.
That particular line, curating it as a symphony, actually sounds really nice later on. When I set out to do these, when I was writing these poems, I never knew what was actually going to happen. It was just a sequence of poems I wrote when I was on this trip, and then and later on, you know, as remembrance and so on. But when I started piecing it all together, I just thought this was like this orchestral score, which sort of changed its pitch and texture and cadence constantly. And then as it turns out, a dear friend of mine, a Scottish-Irish artist, Janet Pierce, who's, you know, her paintings are in the National Gallery in Scotland and Ireland and so on. She is a very good friend, and she does these beautiful meditative paintings, and then we decided to put it all together in a book. The pictures, the paintings on one side, and the poetry. And the poems were not written for the paintings, and the paintings were not written for the poems, but it was yet another experience where this whole symphonic dance took place. And then it's a really beautiful little book, just like Rain. Those are small format art poetry books. I don't know whether you can call them that. And it's part of a series of 6 books. The other one is called Dreaming of Cezanne. And that I wrote actually in Scotland, not very far from where you guys are, in this tiny little town called Stirling. Doon of Stirling, Doune. And the entire book, Distracted Geographies, in fact, is set in Scotland, and also Dreaming of Cezanne is set in Scotland. So there are a lot of very, very important Scottish connections that I have.
Yeah,
Going way back, I was the writer in residence at the Scottish Poetry Library. So I have very, very fond memories of Scotland and still do. And so yes, I work with, quite by chance and accident, I work with a lot of musicians and dancers and painters. I find looking at work in the other genres and other cross art forms very inspiring. Because, if you only stay with text, that's one kind of source of inspiration. But I love music and dance, as you know, and my new book, which is the book in progress, is called The Whispering Anklet. I'll read a poem from it later on. And that entire book is inspiration to Indian dance, classical dance, and Western classical dance. So in a sense, a lot of my poetry gets written through my eye, my ear, and then the tongue comes in later, and the actual act of writing. But all these sensory bits come in together. It was unsurprising that I was studying to be an architect and gave it up to write poetry. A very foolish decision, of course, but you know, had I stuck to it, maybe I would have been in the Rennie McIntosh School of Architecture.
Maybe.
But yes, I mean, the other forms are very, very close to me. They inspire me a lot. And there's a whole sequence of what is called ekphrastic verse, which of course traditionally responds to paintings, but I've expanded it to include music and other forms as well.
So I was wondering on that note, long ago, when we had spoken about, you know, like you had talked about how you had observed these dancers and how you had observed these classical Indian dancers, and then you sort of translated the rhythm of that into, and sort of created your own form from that. And you know, I'd love to listen to more poems. I would love to listen to some of the poems in regards to that. And I was just like, I just had a question. So this, so when you sort of, so when you're writing these, when you're taking the form, when you're taking the dance form, would you consider that the transference of what they're doing as a translation of what they're doing, or is it a form of spatial ekphrasis in a way? How would you personally categorize that?
I think the phrase you used is very good. Spatial ekphrasis is it's actually perfect. It's not a translation. I mean, you know, when someone's dancing, it's a completely different, well-built art object in any case. And when I'm responding to dance in terms of poetry, it's a very separate thing. Though, if the dance didn't exist, the poetry wouldn't have happened in this case. The particular one you're thinking of is called Bharatanatyam dance.
Oh, yes.
Dancer. And my first three books were very, very formal. I love form and meter, and you know, some of my early mentors and teachers were very, very strict with me. They, you know, made me learn poems by heart, which I actually like, which is a tradition which we have in India. In any case, but you know, we were asked to write in sonnets and in cinquains and in sestinas, and of course, as a youngster, when you're sort of in your early 20s or late teens, you sort of rebel and say, "Why do you have to write a sonnet? It's not relevant at all." But of course, the idea is that you know, it's terribly hard to write a good sonnet or anything in form. So those were very good opportunities and exercise for me as a young poet at the time. And I'm glad I did that, because really, until you know the forms, how would you break a form? And if you can't break a form, how do you invent forms? And the wonderful thing about the English language is the English language in the other parts of the world outside of the UK, US, and Australia and Canada has really enriched the English language in the sort of dictionary level or in the social or as a living language. So when I was watching the Bharatanatyam dancer, she was dancing to this classical beat of tadhinta taithaita, tadhinta taithaita. That's the beat of the song and the poetry she was dancing. So when I wrote the poem, of course, I was inspired by her beauty. I completely fell flat on my face in love with this dancer. She's gorgeous to look at. And as a youngster, watching this on stage was, you know, inspiring in many ways. And then by the time I came to the 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, 10th, 12th draft, I was seeing a pattern that was emerging. And I said, you know, why can't I incorporate the beat she is dancing to? Ta dhin ta 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 ta, A-B-A-C-C-A. So then I constructed this rhyme scheme, A-B-A-C-C-A, A-B-A-C-C-A, and the entire poem is formatted in that particular rhyme scheme.
I would love it if you reread it for us.
As one critic said, that it's a new verse form that has been invented, which is, you know, when you do that, it's quite thrilling. The same thing happened with another very old poem of mine, my book number 3, New York Times. The title poem, New York Times, each stanza is in 5 lines. So the 5 lines correspond to the 5 boroughs in New York City, Brooklyn, Bronx, Queens, etc. And the middle line, the X line, the rhyme scheme I use there is A-B-X-B-A. The middle line, the X line,
Yeah.
is actually a reflection of the top two and the bottom two.
This
And
is
the
where all
reason
the
that-
architectural thing has
yes,
come into
yes,
place.
completely. There's obsession with form and architecture and all this sort of strange obsessions. But actually, if that and each stanza, if you flip it 90 degrees, not only it inaccurately maps the island of Manhattan, but if you use the X line that way, then it reflects the tall buildings on the water. So that X line, the mirror line, has it works as a concept. So again, that was a new rhyme scheme that was introduced in English poetry. So this is
Would love
fun.
Would love it if you read it for us.
Sure. Let me read you a shorter poem. The Bharatanatyam dance is a longer poem. This is a relatively new poem, by which I mean it's 2 years old. Poems take a long time to finish. And this is called Kathak. And it's part of my forthcoming book, The Whispering Anklets. And Kathak is a classical Indian dance, as you know, and this is dedicated to Aditi Mangaldas, who's fairly well known in the UK too. She is a fabulous classical dancer, and what she's done with modern dance and contemporary dance is just astounding. But this was a response to one of her more classical productions. And what partly inspired me was, there's a reference to these great Mughal poets, Kabir and Khusro. And she was dancing to the songs and poetry of Kabir and Khusro. But the way she was dancing, I felt even Kabir and Khusro couldn't keep up with her panache. All the
Wow.
Kathak for Aditi Mangaldas. Deep within the eyes of a dancer, irises and poems bloom. On her cupped, curled, coal-line eyelids, similes smile. On each eyelash, metaphors arch, waiting to flutter. On her bosom's electric silk fabric, secret lyrics are bloused. Her limbs, slender extension tips, decant arias. Tumris sing, soar, her balletic grace liquid. She dances on water, always afloat. Even Khusro and Kabir, stunned, tongue-tied, searchingly compete to compose couplets for this dancer's next movement. Pupils wide-eyed, she cajoles, seeking her lover. Hidden in the dancer's heart, the beloved quietly resides.
Wow. A beautiful sort of gift to give as well to someone in another art form, and to have it thing. So I was wondering, based on your love of of these classical Indian forms, and you yourself
And
have said,
Western poems.
and Western poems, and you yourself have said that you're fluent in 3 languages, in English, in Hindi, and in Urdu, and Bengali, of course. So that's
one of the common languages we share. Yes,
it is. And I was just getting into that. Like the subcontinent has got such a rich tapestry of beautiful languages, and so as a Bengali, you've translated Jivananda Das's Bonalata Sen, which is an absolute incredible epic poem. So I was wondering how if you could read that for us, and how you felt about in sort of translating such a iconic poem.
So, we in the subcontinent, especially in India, we are very, very lucky because, most people know 3-4 languages. And I can't take any credit for it, actually. It's just the way we grew up. At home, we spoke Bangla. On the streets in Delhi, I spoke Hindi. In the school I went to Christian Brothers School, so it was all English. So we started our day with the Lord's Prayer, Our Father in Heaven. At home, we are doing Hindu chants. And, so it was a wonderful sort of mixture of all sorts of things. I remember my mother, for instance, has this puja room, the prayer room, and she has all the gods and goddesses, of course, there, predominantly Hindu gods and goddesses. But she has the Quran, she has the crucifix, she has the Granth Sahib. And from very early on, she told me something very simple. She said, it doesn't really matter who you're praying to. It's all the same source. It's the Almighty, it's the universe, it's the life force. It's the civilizational force. So when you grow up in that sort of very wide space of understanding, we are very lucky. So whenever you travel abroad or you're in different countries, I never felt this whole idea of culture shock never happened, because I feel extremely rooted wherever I am. It's just that in England, for instance, they say, why aren't you writing in Bengali? I said, well, you won't understand it, So I think, good Guinness beer is just as good as kuch, or papri chaat, it all depends on the mood. Translation is a very important side. It's a side of me which I've been seriously doing for the last, 15, 20 years now. And I realized, and a lot of it actually, the first time I ever translated a poem was, I was a guest at the Jerusalem International Poetry Festival. This was the time when Yehuda Amikai used to be the director of the festival. And it was a 7-day-long festival, one of the best poetry festivals I've been to. Sadly, it doesn't happen anymore. And during the day, there were all these events for partners and spouses, because they could go on sightseeing trips, and there would be workshops. So one of the things that was happening in the afternoon, all the main programs were in the evening and at night. So the day was actually fairly clear. So one of the things that was happening in the afternoon was this poetry translation workshop led by no less than Daniel Weisbord, who co-founded MPT, Modern Poetry in Translation, with Ted Hughes, and an American poet. So, I made a couple of friends at the festival and I said, we're doing nothing, might as well sit down. And I hadn't translated anything. Of course, I didn't know any Hebrew. We were going to translate this phenomenal poet called Abraham Ben Itzhak, who had only written 16 poems in his entire lifetime. So the workshop basically had about 20 of us, 10 linguists, language experts, academics, Hebrew speakers, and a few stray poets like us. So all the background material was given to us, the literal was given to us, and then the poem was read out and we translated it with the help of other people. And my friend from Macedonia, Zoran Anchevsky, he and I were sitting together, and we were finding these translation things very easy to do. When the scholars were like really struggling, we found it quite easy to do it, because both of us, I realized, were doing it with our ear more than anything else. And then when you look at the poem, we look at the line lengths and so on. So in a sense, when you strip the academia out of it, it becomes much more visceral and guttural. And of course, when it comes to Bangla, in Bangladesh, I translated some of your finest big poets, Shamshur Rahman, Fazl Shahabuddin. The 5 years I spent in Bangladesh was incredible as far as I'm concerned, because I realized how unimportant English is. You wake up in the morning speaking Bangla, and English is so unimportant, unless of course it's the elite, who speak in. So I had a lot of fun. When I'm not able to write my own poems, translation is something that I like doing. Mostly I translate because it's a labor of love. I want poems I've enjoyed to be enjoyed by other people in other languages, in this case, English. And yes, Bonalata Sen by Jivananda Das is one of these iconic poems. There's this spurious story which goes that apparently it's the second most translated text after the Bible. I don't know whether it's true or not, but there are millions of translations of Bonalata Sen. And I realized all the translations I've read, most of them, the story is conveyed properly. But I miss the poetry in most of it. It's very staccato most of the time. So I said, let me give it a go. And so what I did was I basically took down the Bangla rhythms. The way I work, this is now the science background in me. The way I translate, the first 3-4 drafts of translation, I don't have any words. So I read out the poem, mark out the dactyls and the trochees and so on. Get someone else to read it, a male voice and a female voice preferably. And by the third draft, I had this grid in front of me, much like a music score, with only the sound patterning of the poem. Up until then, I haven't even translated a single word or a phrase. Once I have the sound grid in place, then I go back and then translate the poem. So it's a very complicated, circuitous, anal way of doing things. But, you know, I do it for my own pleasure. So therefore,
I was wondering, like, it's got such a rhythmic, it captures so much of the rhythmic quality that the original has. I think the audience would love to hear that.
Let me read it. Yeah. Let me read it.
And, you know, like such an iconic Bengali poem. I'm so happy to have this.
Yes. No, you see, as a Bengali, growing up as a Bengali and in a Bengali enclave in Delhi, you know, Rabindranath Tagore, who won the Nobel Prize, Tagore was pouring out of every orifice. So as a youngster, I took a great aversion to Tagore. It's not something that I can openly admit to Bengali audiences. Because I was interested more in the modernist poets like Qazi Nazrul Islam and Jivananda Das and so on. But it's only as an adult, as a mature reader, that I actually realign my relationship with Tagore. I mean, he's an incredible polymath, of course. But in any case, this is Bonalata Sen by Jivananda Das. No relation to mine. There's the same surname. I wish I knew her, but sadly, she's only a muse for the poet, the original poet. Bonalata Sen by Jivananda Das. For 1,000 years, I walked this earth's passage by day and night. From Nonka's shores to Molloy's vast seas, I've traveled much, been a guest at Bimbishar and at Ashok's courts, stayed in the distant nights in the town of Vidarbha. I'm long worn out. Around me, waters of sea and life have endlessly swirled. My only peace, a fleeting moment snatched with her, Natorer Bonalata Sen. Chultark Andhokar, I'm forgetting the Bengali line here, but if you read the Shobhachachi's recitation, it's really booming. Like the dense ink night of Bidisha, her hair black, deep black, her face like this delicate weave of Shrabosti's filigree frieze. Just as a lost boatman, rudderless, tossing in the far seas, chances upon a lush green isle of spice, I too caught a sight, saw her, a mere glimpse in the dark. Gently raising her eyes like a bird's nest, she whispered, "Where were you all this while?" And there she stands at my dream's end, my own Bonalata Sen. With soft settling hiss of dew, evening closes the day's end. Kites erase from their wings sun-stained smell of flight. When colors of the earth gently fade, fireflies light up their palette, and old songs find new lyric, old stories new score. Birds return home, so do the rivers. As life's trade, its give and take ceases. Only the dark stays, and just as it remains, so does, sitting by my side, face to face, my own Bonalata Sen.
Beautiful. Absolutely. And it captures so much of that epic rollingness, which is there in Bengali poetry as well. So with that, I was wondering if we should you have another poetry video that's
Yes.
there. It's called Silences, and it's made by this new, young, up and coming filmmaker. And I think it would be lovely to show that and then sort of open up the floor to some questions from the audience.
I think that's a splendid idea. Let's do that. Yes.
Okay.
The Silence is a combination of, it's a triptych. It's the 3 poems which follow one after the other. And it's made by Ramanjit Kaur, who is a theater artist. And this is a first film.
Okay, so let me just find it and we shall. Yes. Poets and technology sometimes are not the greatest combination.
After a long concert and after dinner, I find myself unexpectedly with you in my room. In this new space, finding oneself is wonderful. I was here and not here at the same time. Later, I felt as if I had entered a story of an old familiar novel, a character I knew but had not met in flesh until now. You, me, and my winter's dream. Our mattress is the wide ocean, the crushed sheets, the waves. We sail together full-blown. But during your long absences as our ships are docked on different shores, sometimes the bed dreams. I imagine the wet breaking the anchor loose, defying gravity, current, and electricity. As photons propel and burn, even the wild salted expands into a monument, a desire. Permanent like the ocean bed, its pulses uncontrollably rocking. The waters, the bodies, the dreams. Silence has its own subtle color. Between each breath pause, heat simmers latent saliva, tongue entwined lisp. Here and there, errant clouds wait, yearning for rain, desire melting even silence to words. Words color bleed incarnadine as your lips whisper softly the secrets of your silence. Your fine chicken blouse, white, sheer, and almost transparent, cannot hide the quiet of your heartbeat on your wheat olive skin. The milk-white flower adorning your hair sheds a solitary petal, just one. In that petal, silence blooms color. White, transparent white, pure white silence.
Thank you so much for sharing that with us. And I can't help but just just be amazed at your house as well with that amazing library. But well, I think we should open up some questions to the audience if the audience has any questions. So you can message them. You can type in the chat box, I suppose, or if you have any questions, you can unmute yourself now and ask.
Hi. Hi, Sudeep Uncle. This is Osama.
Hi, Osama. How are you?
Good, good. It's really great to see you again and to hear your poetry. I mean, it's been a little while, and it's really, really great to hear you speak and recite again. I was wondering for the last two films that you showed, when you were doing when the music that accompanies it, the background, it went so well with your music, it went so well with your words and the visuals. Did you have a hand in the composition, or was it done separately? How was it put together?
So actually, I have to say that I had no hand in any of this. I gave complete freedom to the filmmaker. The music was composed after after the music director saw the film. He's a very famous Bengali musician called Tanmoy Bose. He's a percussionist, tabla player. He plays worldwide. And he did the music after listening to the poems. And it was interesting because there were 2 or 3 different types of possibilities. And really, he decided that it should be minimalist, which I'm very glad about. So yeah, it was entirely the music director's choice and the director's choice. And everything, even the poems were chosen by the director. And I really didn't want to interfere because, there's a strong other side of me, which is photography and filmmaking. And if I started interfering, I have such strong aesthetic taste that I would start intruding into the poem, into the film. So I sort of decided to completely stay away. What I didn't want to really do, which I was kind of forced to do, and that Ramanjit is a very forceful woman director. She got me on screen. I just wanted to lend my voice and give my poems for the film. She got me to act, and I can't act for nuts. I look so constipated and stiff, and that's not my role. But somehow, she said, "We're going to do it," and I had to do it. But that was the only thing that was forced upon me. But otherwise, I think it was a beautiful experience. Yeah, and entirely their composition, totally.
I am noticing on the thing we have, this is just sort of a thing notice for the literary lounge as such. I'm noticing that we've got two of our following speakers
Yes,
coming.
I see Pierre there.
Pierre's there, and Eric is also here.
Yes.
So looking forward. Of course, you'll be interviewing Pierre on the 10th of September. Wait for that. And our next upcoming show is with Lisa Ducasse, who's a wonderful Mauritian, Parisian spoken word artist who I met there. And following that, we have Pierre, and we're looking very much forward to Eric as well. And we've got Khalid Matawa and Lazina Morton coming in this series. So I think I'm very happy that you're also very happy with the lineup that we've managed to present.
Eric, Pierre, come on, ask me some questions.
Yesterday, I had this dream where I ate my fridge, and this morning I can't find it. So
that's why you're looking white.
That's why I'm unable to ask you. No, seriously, Sudeep, lovely to see you. And I remember this time last year we were in a CD bar somewhere in Belfast.
Yes.
And that's where
we read together. We read together at the Jaipur Literature Festival at wonderful Seamus Heaney's home place.
It was brilliant.
What a venue to read at.
Yes,
and Seamus Heaney's family was there.
They were there. So I almost missed your session this morning because I had something, but I told those guys, listen, I have to be here. So lovely to finally see you again.
Lovely that you're here, Eric, as well, Eric, and I'm looking forward to our session.
Same here, my friend, same here.
Yeah.
So I have a question in relation to, I am unmuted, right? You hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I'm sitting on one of your lines, Sudeep. I'm in Brooklyn, right?
Oh,
so
yeah.
One of your 5 borough lines are there. I would have loved, you moved to other poems to read. I would have loved to hear that because I really liked the idea of the X as the middle line and what you did with that. So if you have one or the other line there, and then tell me which line is the Brooklyn.
No. I don't have any hierarchies in terms of the boroughs because all my friends will kill me. Even the Manhattanites think that that's number 1, but there's nothing like that, But I don't know whether we have time. Otherwise, I would have read the poem and you would have seen the flow and drift.
Maybe you can end with reading the poem because we've already sort of come to the end of the session. So it'd be great to hear the poem, and then we could sort of end on that wonderful note.
Okay, let's see. It wasn't part of my. Let me just see where it is. Do you know the page number?
1 second.
Sorry, I may have.
Shehzar bhai, within this time, may I ask a question to Mr. Sudeep?
Of course.
Yeah. Hi, I'm Radhi. I'm working for Luxembourg Review today. That is. So listening to your poetry, I realized that you see things, see more things that we with our normal eyes do in everyday lives. That is what I felt listening to every line that you told us. And I was wondering, is there anything that you can recommend for us that we can do or practice to kind of like harness some of that magic of seeing things in that kind of magical way?
See, first and foremost, you just have to enjoy poetry. It should be fun. It should be pleasurable. It's not an oppressive thing. It's not a morose thing. It's not an academic thing only. It's something that you do because, well, as poets, we don't even have a choice. If we didn't do it, I don't know what else we'll do. But also I would read your contemporaries, read the seniors behind you, because a lot of the young people I meet now are operating in a vacuum. So you really need to know your tradition, whatever the tradition. And there's so many silos in the world to look, to choose from, whether it's the Western tradition or the Eastern tradition, Indian, African, Caribbean. I mean, we are just spoiled for riches, So read the great poets. If you can't figure out, the ancient ones like Chaucer and Milton, if you find them too hard, go to them later on, but get the 20th century poets like, Brodsky or Walcott, the great masters. You have two masters here looking, listening to us here, so read their work. Ultimately, your eye and the ear get strained. Writing is only one part of it. But a lot of the millennials, what happens with social media is, they write a poem, they're sad or they're drunk or they're unhappy. They write a poem at night. It's on Facebook. Morning, they've got 5 likes. The 6th like is from Uzbekistan. And then they actually write world famous poets. There's a real problem there. It takes a long time for a poem to form. I mean, of course, there are times when you get the poem and it's almost ready. But it takes a while. It's a hard graft. Editing is probably more important than the writing of it. The writing of the poetry, the inspiration is the most important thing because it gets you going. But actually sculpting it is where the poem happens. And of course, all poets, we have this, the invisible antenna hanging from our, head. We pick up things that most people don't hear. We overhear conversations. Anytime I'm anywhere, I'm always overhearing other people more than I'm hearing the person who's talking to me. That's the sort of strange instinct I have. I end up when I look at the page, I end up looking at the white space more than the inked page. Because what's important is the tension that the white space on the page creates with the printed text is equally important. Think of it as a film. When you're seeing me now and all of us, we only have the pleasure of a 3:4 or a 16:9 aspect ratio rectangle. What is left out is probably the bulk of it. So the best filmmakers, for instance, use what is outside the screen equally important as in the screen. So yes, read a lot, write a lot. Don't put it out on Facebook until it's published in a magazine. Put up the link for sure, share it. But don't put it up, within 5 minutes. Because everybody goes rah, 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 awesome, dude, emojis, all kinds of things. So the person is deluded before they can even log off. So that's a real problem. I mean, I love social media, but there has to be a time for it to gestate.
But anyways, sorry, we're sort of, I think we've reached the limit now, Pierre. We're really sorry, but maybe you can share it, share the poem. I'll send you a copy of the poem, the New York thing, or Sudeep can send it as well. But
I'll send you the poem, Pierre, yes.
Yeah.
Great, thanks, Sudeep.
So,
great hearing you, great hearing you.
Fantastic, lovely. Thank you so much.
So thank you so much to everybody who attended today, to Sudeep, of course, and to the University of Glasgow for sponsoring this literary series in collaboration with the Luxembourg Review. It's such a privilege to have so many amazing poets, and hope to see some of you again in the next reading, which is really wonderful spoken word poet Lisa Ducasse, and then following that, of course, Pierre. So, bye-bye.
Thank you very much.
You
Thanks
guys,
for your time.
take care.
Bye.
Thank you.